You want to know how to recover from setbacks, but my question is, why is that even a word in your vocabulary? Some of the very best things that can happen in your life are catalyzed by the worst things that have ever happened in your life. I'll share very briefly a little bit about my personal story as it relates to the potential for interpreting something as a setback, which it doesn't exist in my reality, and you can adopt that belief as well. When I was starting to implement manifestation practices into my desire for weight loss, I was just coming off of the literal worst experience of my life. I had experienced a traumatic event while I was in the military. After reporting that event, everything in my life fell apart. Every single aspect of my life crumbled after reporting that event. I went through a 4-year period of absolute hell. And after 2 of those years of hell had elapsed, I decided that I wanted to lose the weight that I had gained as a result of the trauma that I experienced, which at the time was about 80 pounds that I had gained in the first 2 years after the trauma. I had dealt with my mental health enough that I thought, okay, let me now put my focus onto losing the weight that I had gained. This was also around the time that I experienced the worst heartbreak of my life. And like many people, that heartbreak is what led me to finding the idea of conscious creation, and that we can have a really big say in what happens in our reality simply by the way that we allow our thoughts to percolate. I began to use the manifestation practices that I was learning on my journey towards losing the trauma weight. I lost about 50 pounds, and then I had a very painful run-in with my ex, and many of my thoughts reverted back to the old identity of who I was. And I gained about 20 pounds of that 50 pounds back. It took me about 4 months or so before I was able to get myself back together. And then some things aligned in my life beautifully, and my weight loss got back on control. And from there, it was that 80 pounds of trauma weight was just went. And then I lost 90, and then 100, and then 110, and 120. I believe that if I had viewed what happened after that run-in with my ex as a setback, then I would still probably be in that old loop of thinking. But what I decided to categorize it as, what I decided to interpret it as, was it gave me information about what was going on with my identity in here. And I had a decision to make. I had a decision as to whether or not I was going to identify with all of those terrible thoughts that kept me stuck and kept me heartbroken and kept me overweight, or if I wanted to use this as an opportunity to say, okay, the mirror was brought in front of my face, and I now see what my identity is getting me if I revert to the old one. And I want to see what my identity will get me if I stick with the new one. And so I was presented a fork in the road. I opted towards leaving the old identity behind and identifying solely with the new identity. I would have never done that had it not been for the setback that I experienced. I believe that the experience that I had was a wonderful opportunity to choose growth, to choose a different identity, to reinforce the beliefs that I was trying to instill and that I was working to instill, versus letting that reaffirm the old identity that was causing me so many problems in my life, that was causing me heartbreak and illness and all sorts of things. Even in the worst periods of my life, when my entire life was crumbling around me, I always had in the back of my mind, I always knew that once I got through it, it was going to better me in some way. And holy shit, maybe I'll talk about that at some point, but holy shit, did it better me? Did my life get better after everything crumbled? So setback does not have to be in your vocabulary. I highly advise against it. Love ya.